everyone, and welcome to the Educator Experience. I am your host. My name is Salli Carter, and this is a space where I sit down with post secondary educators and those involved in adult education and where we share impactful moments in our teaching careers. Today, I have the esteemed pleasure of sitting down with my buddy, Justin Andrews. He's a chef. He's an educator. He's an entrepreneur. He recently launched a really cool thing called FoodWeb, and it's an online platform that makes rented shared kitchens easy. So check out his app, connect with him on LinkedIn. He is super open to that. He is bringing in a teaching assistant or TA perspective, which he has had the privilege of working with at Dalhousie for many years now in the sustainability department. We also talk about rubrics. We talk about how educators can incorporate TAs into their curriculum and experiences. Also, if you are enjoying these conversations, I implore you, I invite you, and I ask of you to please subscribe, share, like. Let's get these conversations out to the world, right? The idea of the educator experience is for it to create community. So that's what we're doing here. And we look forward to all the awesome conversations in the future. Thank you for all the support. Being an educator is one heck of a lonely journey, but every step holds a story, an experience that shapes how we teach, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Educator Experience. I'm your host, Salli Carter, and together we'll explore the moments that define us as educators. Through authentic conversations and shared experiences, we're building a community that connects, reflects, and inspires, all while breaking down barriers in education, one story at a time. You are not alone. Let's grow together. Like, how weird is it to say I don't have a teacher who changed my life? I've had incredibly supportive mentor bosses and people in the business world who've shared wisdom and stuff like that, but I don't have a teacher. And I'm not saying they were bad, just no one really stood out. And it was so weird to see that as part of a conversation because I feel like normal people do. They're like, they have this person that they think about in their head. They were a great teacher. They did this. And I'm like, everyone is fine. Fine. How about, okay, tell me about you. Do you have
But
one
but
similar?
you just need to be the teacher you wanna see in the world, you know?
I got a text from a student. She's at Thompson Rivers University. She's like, oh, I'm just texting you to say I have an English class and they're not you and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I just don't have like a teacher, like an educator that stood out. Do you?
Yeah, definitely. In junior high, I had this teacher named Mr. Half. If you're out there, buddy, let me know.
You're like, call me.
And yeah, he was our English teacher, and English class is just like what it is. You're gonna read some books and write some book reports and like grammar and stuff, right? But he just like really allowed us to do creative projects as a way to like learn. So like he met with us each one on one and was like, "What are you interested in?" And for me at the time, it was like film and like video editing. And he's like, "Okay, so instead of doing like a book report and writing pages and pages on the computer, like put your vision and voice together through like a film project." And like this was like grade 8 or grade 7, and like we made like the silliest videos.
Word.
That was a practice of like putting my ideas through a medium, and other people made their own little play.
So you have been a TA for Dalhousie for various courses. Tell us about your background, a little bit about you, and how your journey to getting into education.
Yeah, I think my education journey started quite young. I my first job ever was a multimedia camp for kids. I really enjoyed it. I got along with the camp counselors, and they offered me a job. And then so the following summer, I worked for them in a kind of facilitator type role, but we also had curriculum to follow of how to teach these camps. And so that was awesome. And then my next job was working at an after school program.
So cool. So totally, you got into teaching early. Yeah.
I did. And like the after school program was more babysitting than teaching, but the design camp there was a lot of teaching there. Fast forward through life. I went to university for 2 years, right out of high school, thought I wanted to go to law school, dropped out, went to cooking school.
Lawyer to cooking to chef. That's
Right.
amazing. I love it.
And then, yeah, after cooking school, I worked in the food industry for about 6 years. All sorts of things, restaurants, catering, festivals, cooking in the forest, like all types of stuff. During that time, I did some cooking classes and, just kind of like knew I wanted to teach and random opportunities would come up. And I was actually trying to make more of a sophisticated business out of that. I realized like, unless I can, buy a kitchen for 100 grand or something, it's not going to work. So I went back to school. That's when I did my undergrad at Dalhousie, studied sustainability. And as I mentioned earlier, I was a little bit older. I was 26 when I started. So all the other students are like 17, 18, right out of high school. So I started bonding with my instructors more than my fellow students. And then some TA positions started popping up. And yeah, so I just got involved.
Well, it's funny that you say you were more your instructors or professors' age. Like, then there's me doing my master's at 45. It's like, please. I remember emailing our administrator being like, can you just put me in a group with some people, at least one other person my age, please? I know they're out there. I had the opportunity to TA for a class, for a graduate class this summer, because I was in Toronto for 4 months. And I was like, okay, well, I don't have the capacity to teach because I have this extra business launch happening. Where can I make some connections? And this opportunity came up and it was really cool to not have to be the instructor. And it's funny because I thought to myself, I flipping hate grading. I hate marking, but you know what? What if I'm paid to just mark and
Mm,
grade? Maybe that will change my perspective. Turns out, no, it still sucks.
yeah,
I
it
hate it with a
sucks. Yeah.
passion. And when you're a TA, everyone comes at you. Like everyone came at me. Why is this? Why is that? Da, 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 da. Oh my God.
Like,
It was like insane. And because
mm,
you're not the instructor, yeah, it's a different vibe. Like I didn't make the rules. I'm marking within them. But when you're just paid to like just grade, I learned that there really have to be really clear parameters for the students. And it made me reflect, how could I be even more clear for my students with respect to maybe the rubrics or
yeah,
the feedback, the level of feedback I'm giving.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna say something about rubrics, and then I want to circle back. But
Yeah.
rubrics always like my undergrad was in sustainability and sociology. So with my sociology hat on, like everything is subjective. So to have a rubric that says this paper is scored out of 20, 5 points for content, 5 points for ideas, 5 points for formatting, like if they fucked up the formatting, but their writing and ideas were like absolutely incredible, is formatting worth 5 points or is it worth three? Is it worth 1.5? And like every professor will have a different formula for what sections of the rubric are worth what points. So when you're
Yeah.
grading by a rubric, it's just so arbitrary. And like I have been a TA for classes that are like have a very intense rubric with like 8 different sections, and this section's worth 3 points and this section's worth 8 points. And then another class I TA'd for, there was literally no rubric. In terms of, it was literally like, I am going to sit down and digest this and look at the entirety, and if I think your formatting was so terrible that I can't even read this, then I'm going to make a note about that, and I'm going to like make my own subjective calculation in my head of what grade I think you get. And there's pros and cons to both. I don't know if one's right, but I just, yeah, rubrics and how to decide and then how one from one class to the other, and if you're like on a scholarship, so grades really matter. Like you have to maintain something, for example. One professor's rubric criteria to another can just impact. So
Actually, let's roll with this because this is a really interesting conversation. And I don't disagree, but I want to challenge certain things and understand your thinking more. So, yes, rubrics are going to be different, but isn't it a little bit easier or more straightforward for students to understand than having like not having a rubric and having some arbitrary system and then among professors and not having any idea?
yes, like I think it's important to have clear criteria of what's required, like associating a number of points to those criteria, right? So if you're writing a paper,
Mhm.
like my background was sustainability. So students will pick an example like plastic pollution. Okay, cool. They're going to research plastic pollution in a specific city. What's the problem? What needs to be done? Recommendations. It's like classic little research paper and proposal. There's a general framework of what's required. You need to articulate the problem. You need background research. We want you to have a minimum number of sources that you draw on so that the data is quality. Yes, I agree that all of those criteria need to be clear for the students of what to go out and do, but to assign the grade value to all those sections, saying having 5 sources is worth 5 points, your formatting is worth 5 points, or sources is worth 4 and formatting is worth 8. Like the actual associating the value to the different components, I find laughable sometimes, because you're like, this is like, you grade somebody's paper and it actually just like wasn't that good, but because their formatting was good and they checked the box of getting enough sources, they're getting an A minus when really this is like a B. Like if you're looking at the subjective quality of their argument and how they articulate their thinking, it was just low quality. But because you're following the rubric, all of a sudden they're pushed into the A range, right? And you're like, ooh, this is weird. Like, why is this scored this way?
Personally made that mistake in classes years ago where I looked at it after the fact and I saw students giving really average work that were getting better than average grades. And I just like, wow, I messed up with my rubric. This is why this is happening. However, having said that, that is potentially a problem with the scoring within the rubric and the professor doing it incorrectly per se, right? And giving more weights to things like formatting or whatever when critical thinking analysis and stuff might be needed to be higher. I see what you're saying, but I think and let me know if this is resonating with you, but it comes down to the actual development of an appropriate rubric.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, as a TA, I never got, like, I was just handed the rubric, and we use D2L like a lot of universities do, and like the rubric is built in, right? So like I look at the thing and then
Right.
I click the points, and I think that goes to say like there's no like standardization. Different professors use different things, and often I was just kind of thrown into the weeds. And am I giving good feedback or not? That actually ties back to the other thing I wanted to say. You were saying students grilling you on like, why'd I get this? Why'd I get this? Oh my god! So in the last my last year and a half, so I TA'd for like 3.5 or 4 years, and what I'll just say is like the students they've been shaped in a different way, for better or for worse. We'll see, but like we saw a lot of students struggling, but a lot of students just not engaged. Like the engagement was terrible. And whether it was in person or online, it didn't matter. Like students not raising their hand, not wanting to engage, didn't matter what we did, versus like, we're going to break you into small groups and you can all talk and then have somebody share back. Like we did all the different things. And it wasn't just my tutorial. Like I would have weekly meetings with my other TAs. It was a big class that had like 9 sections, right? And like the engagement was just terrible. And the professor was like, who's taught this course for 12 years, the last 2 or 3, the engagement has just been really poor.
Wow. Okay.
Um, and, you could speculate for days on why, but that's just what we experienced. And within the grading portal and D2L, when I give feedback, it allows me to see if the feedback has been open or not, right? And students weren't even reading their feedback. I would say over 2/3 didn't even open the feedback. And one of the classes I was a TA for, there was 9 assignments. It was a double credit class in a single semester. And there's 6 individual assignments and 3 group assignments. And the individual assignments build on each other, right? There's a reflective exercise they do 3 of, and then there's other essays that they're like building on. People not reading the feedback and then making the same mistakes. I had one student who didn't read feedback for any assignment the whole course, and in their final paper, we failed them. Like they got like a 42% or something, and the feedback was, if you ever read this, please know, and they didn't. They just didn't read all they do is see the grade, and then they just don't read the feedback. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you've experienced anything like that, of like actually just struggling with not even engaging in class, but engaging with the journey, engaging with the assignments, engaging with the process of learning. Like, why are you spending 40 grand on an undergrad degree if you're not going to engage in the bare bones? So
When I did get into teaching, moving from continuing education type style workshops and shorter courses and professional adults to first year students, it was quite a big difference with everything. And I was told that my first experience with teaching first year, because they were post COVID students or high school students, it was more challenging. It was different. And it was tough. I now teach the higher grades, and it's a lot easier. It's a lot more fun, engaging. And what's funny is I just thought about this the other day. So it's now just into a new semester. First assignment come out for some classes. No one's asked a question. Like, in the higher levels, like, very few people have reached out to ask me any questions about my assignments and stuff. Whereas this time for first year classes, it would be constant questions, right? Because it's a new experience for them. They're challenging everything, everything. Why is it like this? Can we do it this way?
well, it's funny though, because one of the profs I was a TA for, like, she has been a prof for like 15 years, and she's just like doesn't take any shit anymore. And one of the classes is a second year class, but you can take it in your first year. Like, there's no prerequisites for it. So there's
Yeah.
often a lot of very young students. So as you say, they have questions about everything. It's like, read the syllabus, just do it. Just like actually just read the syllabus. And there's a Snoop Dogg video of him saying, read the syllabus. And like, she embedded that video in the D2L portal. So the first thing you see as a student is Snoop Dogg saying, just read the syllabus, man. And like, she encouraged us that if we get questions that we know the answer is in the syllabus, just don't respond,
Mm,
or email back saying read the syllabus. Like, your time is sacred as an educator, and the
yeah.
amount of emails you can get when like there's actually stuff that needs attention. Like, some questions are like, dude, just read the syllabus.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I'm definitely experiencing that shift with the higher level classes, and it's beautiful. I'm like, do. I have so much extra time. What am I going to do with myself? This is fabulous. I'm not just constantly answering questions. But having said that, as a TA, because it was my first time TAing this particular course, students were reaching out to me for questions, whereas I was just learning it alongside them at the same time. And they thought I had all these answers. And I'm like, listen, I haven't even met with the instructor yet. So that was an uncomfortable moment in having to say to students, I know I'm the TA for your course, but I don't know anything more about your assignment until
Yeah.
I sit down with with the instructor, right? So that was, yeah, I'm like, I'm learning here with you.
Well, and I think that, from what I understand, like you're trying to do with like the educator experience, like I think that speaks to like how do we actually prepare ourselves better for education? Because I've experienced that too. Like I've had profs that I worked for where we sit down like before the semester starts. Like they offered like, hey,
Mm.
like you don't actually get paid until day one, but like, can I take you out for dinner? And like look at the whole journey. Like this is what the course is trying to teach. These are the assignments. Do you have any input on like should this assignment actually go before this one? Like and understanding what the whole journey is going to be. Whereas I've had situations like you just described where it's like, no, you're the TA, you're going to mark stuff, and it's like literally week by week. Like every week we look at the content for the next week. And then it's like, oh, we're going to do this assignment, here's the details. And you're kind of just like keeping up versus having an idea, and having that strategizing session. And, you know, from a policy level, right? Like professors in their salaries, from what I understand, like there's an expectation that like if the semester starts on September 4th, the professor didn't start working on September 4th. They probably started working in July because they need to like develop the curriculum, and the curriculum needs to be sent to the university and reviewed to be approved to actually be taught on September 4th. The TAs often don't start until September 12th
Yeah.
because the first week of you're just thrown in.
Yeah.
So TAs should be getting paid a week early to also sit down with the professors and get an idea of what's coming, because it would be a smoother experience not just for us as TAs but for the students, right? When a
Mhm.
student's paying 10 grand a year for a degree and they ask a question and you have to have that awkward moment where you're like, I don't know, right? Me as a student in that moment, I'm like, wow, you guys are unprepared. Like, we should have that answer. We should know what's coming, what the assignments are going to be if we want to deliver a good learning environment. But
Yeah,
yeah,
or now, because now I'm just thinking about what you're saying. So, or a professor being clear that the TA was just brought on, this is when they can start taking questions, and having that clear top down type of informative relationship so that the TA isn't being bombarded with questions they don't know about yet, and that there's that level of support there. Interesting. Yeah, it's funny. I had some students reach out to me to TA for some classes, and I'm like, it'd be kind of fun. I would imagine it's a lot of work for professors to work with TAs to like, that is a lot of time from them to sit down, integrate them into the course and all of that good stuff, as opposed to just hand off marking, right? And just kind of work with them in that fashion. However, you are really building or helping develop future educators and integrating them into the system too. I just don't know a lot about TA ship. Is that even a word?
mm,
TA ness. Um, and how it's done and integrated at different institutions. I think it's fascinating. I think there's an opportunity to do it really well.
housey, there's two tiers. So there's teaching assistants and there's markers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just a marker, you're just a marker. Students never get your email address. you you know if there's a question that's dealt with in the portal, right, you're not delivering content, whereas TAs will actually like either sit in the class and like help with stuff, or they'll lead the smaller tutorials when there's like a bigger class. We're just not always prepared well. It falls to the professor to kind of be in charge of how they're going to manage their TAs. Like there's not really anything from the university that says like, here's how we're going to train TAs, structure and support.
So when I first had the idea for the educator experience, um, this was pre Center for Teaching and Learning Centers, and a lot of additional onboarding support. But it all depends on institution, right? And it all depends on, like, for sessional people, it's different. It's a different vibe, right? As opposed to if you're a TA working for a sessional versus a faculty person, those may be two different vibes as well, and two different onboarding processes, depending on the time that the professors get paid for. But I think things are getting better for sure, as this conversation continues to grow. Yeah, but there's still a lot of work to be done, right? Justin, as we start to wind down this conversation, I'm most curious to know, what advice would you have for someone who is maybe a new educator or a new TA?
That's a good question.
Let's do TA and then educator, because you've seen from all sides.
Yeah, I think for me, it would be just like carve out the time to really like work with like whatever professor you're working under as a TA, because again, to be, whether it's just being more prepared and actually understanding what the next like 14 weeks are going to look like, maybe they're open to your suggestions on things. Maybe there's something you want to do, if you have a tutorial or a lab and you're like, I'm really passionate about like this thing and it fits into curriculum, like that's going to be only possible if you're really engaged with your supervisor. One of the classes was at the 2000 level class I mentioned earlier. There was 7 or 8 TAs and we had our weekly meeting, but some of them, other than the weekly meeting, they just weren't present. Whereas other ones are like hanging out in the office, getting to know the professors. And we're like, oh, like I talked about this in class the other day. Do you have any ideas? It's just like get involved more than just, I just like show up to my weekly meeting and then I grade papers, like I would just say get involved.
Okay. So as a TA, your advice would be to engage, make the most of the experience, it sounds like. And
make the most of the experience, don't just engage with your students, but your colleagues and the institution, right?
Yeah. Okay. And now from the other perspective, from the educator, one piece of advice for them. Them/us.
I think it's similar, but I think for me it would be collaborate, right? Like if I'm thinking about doing education outside of a university, like when I think back to like the cooking classes I've done or other things, trying to do it alone is so hard. Like the amount of things to coordinate, and like I have this itch to be doing food education. Like I think about it all the time. I have like pages and pages of notes of stuff that I want to offer, but like right now I'm focused on FoodWeb, and one day when I'm ready to get involved in food education again, I'm going to build a team and the team is going to deliver food education. Like me as one person trying to like plan curriculum, book venue, like do every single thing. Some people work really well alone, and in that way I don't. And I really would rather deliver education as a team than an individual.
I love this. Well, thank you so much. This has been such an incredibly valuable and exciting conversation. And my mind is already exploding with ideas and how to create more team-based environments within my various practices. So thank you, Justin. Sending you so much love, my friend, for making time this Sunday morning. And yeah, thank you again. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Educator Experience. We hope you're walking away feeling connected, inspired, and just a little bit more supported on your journey. Ready to go a little bit deeper? Join the Educator Experiences community and check out our courses and workshops specifically designed to support new educators as they navigate the ups, downs, and everything in between. You'll find it all at educatorexperiences.com. If today's conversation resonated with you, share it with a fellow educator, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Together, we're building a vibrant community rooted in support and connection. See y'all next Monday.